Honorable members and our distinguished guests, please let us start our mini plenaries. Our distinguished guests, you are most welcome to the National Assembly. Please, I'm requested to request you that you don't participate in the debate. I'm told that you are not supposed to clap your hands, shout, to do anything except to enjoy the debate of members of parliament. And you are most welcome. You are most welcome. Please feel at home, enjoy it. Can the secretary read the order?
Debate on vote number 27, Environmental Affairs Appropriation Bill.
The Honorable Minister to take the platform.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair of the session, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister of Department, Mayor Barbara Thompson, Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers present here with us, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, members of the Portfolio Committee, and all honorable members of Parliament, distinguished guests, the Chief Executive Officers of public entities, all other members who may not have mentioned by name, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you. Today we present the 2018-2019 budget of the Department of Environmental Affairs. It is an affirmation of our commitment to meeting our country's developmental needs, transforming and growing our economy, creating jobs, and conserving our environment. But before I begin with the programs of our department, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to acknowledge a number of milestones in the political life of our nation. This year marks the centenaries of the titans of liberation movement, President Nelson Mandela and Mama Albertina Sisulu. Tata Mandela's love for nature, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, as well as we know, and indeed it is indeed an honor for us to celebrate his life, but also that we commit ourselves to advance policies to conserve our environment. We also remember with sadness the passing of Mama Madikizela Mandela this year, and our stalwart, Dr. Zola Skweyiya. These stalwarts will forever be remembered for their contribution to our liberation and beyond. As you will all know, ladies and gentlemen, government that is led by our President Cyril Ramaphosa has prioritized attracting investments into our economy. Ours is a collective vision of a South Africa in which decent employment is created through inclusive growth, poverty is reduced, and the lives of our citizens are transformed. From an environmental perspective, ladies and gentlemen, it is our mandate to facilitate an economic growth path that is equitable, inclusive, sustainable, and environmentally sound. This is in line with our constitution that promotes sustainable development and the right of all South Africans to enjoy an environment that is not harmful to their health and well-being. The environmental sector continues to be a source of and facilitator of investment, of job creation, entrepreneurship, and skills development, in line with the key objectives of our National Development Plan. We have adopted the three-pronged approach, which is a strategic approach indeed to facilitate the government's long-term radical economic transformation goals. These are our Pakisa strategic approach, our environmental justice strategic approach, and our economy-wide service delivery approach. This work, ladies and gentlemen, these concerted efforts are in pursuit of a low-carbon, inclusive, and climate-resilient growth, as we all know. And this is in line with the climate change response policy that we adopted a few years ago. Coming to dealing with issues of low-carbon and climate-resilient economy, our approach, ladies and gentlemen, centers on seizing opportunities that are presented by the transition to a low-carbon economy. South Africa is a board member of 3 significant funding bodies, namely the Green Climate Fund, known as GCF, the World Bank's Climate Investment Fund, and the Global Environment Facility. These membership enables us to shape the policies, programming, and governance of these respective institutions. We are also a member of a Partnership for Action on Green Economy, which is known as PAGE. And this year we'll be hosting the 3rd Ministerial Conference in South Africa of this PAGE. During the last financial year, we have been instrumental in mobilizing money and funds to the tune of $119.720 US. That's millions, don't say it's just less money. That of which the 21.2 million US dollars has been in grant funding. 2 of our well-capacitated institutions, the South African National Biodiversity Economy and the Development Bank of Southern Africa, are accredited as South Africa's direct access entities of the Green Climate Fund, and are also currently calling for expressions of interest to address the GCF resources. Our 4 institutions, namely Sanbi, Isimangaliso Wetland, the SOARS, and SunParks, continue to do us proud in contributing towards the network of environmental conservation. Ladies and gentlemen, all of our actions have become all the more imperative within the context of an ever-changing climate change. The increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events around South Africa, from flash flooding in some parts of our country to devastating droughts in some other parts, tells us that climate change has long become a measurable reality. Our signing of the Paris Agreement to combat climate change is an acknowledgement that this is a problem requiring global effort. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa actually continues to play an active role on the international stage through participation in a number of key multilateral environmental agreements and their associated negotiations. And honorable members, in addition to finalizing our national climate change adaptation strategy, we have developed a draft climate change bill to provide effective national response for both mitigation and adaptation action. We are also currently, may I also say that this the climate change bill has actually gone through the stages of cabinet. The first stages will be coming to Parliament soon. And thanks to members of Parliament for insisting that this actually happens. We are also currently implementing phase 1 of our greenhouse gas emission reduction system, with carbon budgets already allocated to most of the significant emitters. We are working hard on phase 2 and are confident that once implemented, it will support our transition to a low carbon inclusive economy. As part of our efforts to bolster our dealing with climate change and combating climate change, the South African Weather Services recently adopted the approach of building a weather-smart nation. This aims to enhance our early warning system to ensure that climate change and weather data and products and applications are available to all South Africans in a form of an app. Honorable members, as we pursue the path of sustainable development, it is essential that we have a regulatory system that is both streamlined and effective in order to make it easier to do business in South Africa, as well as to attract much-needed investments. And honorable members, indeed, this year marks the 20 years since the adoption of environmental impact assessment, which most of us do not quite like, actually, which is actually a tool to advance sustainable development. We have, over time, both simplified and rationalized these processes to allow for greater regulatory efficiency as well as faster turnaround time. In the past financial year, a total of 1,238 EIA applications were finalized by all competent authorities, that's from province, national, and all those who are responsible for this. Of these, a total of 1,190 was finalized within the regulated time frame, with only 48 finalized outside this time frame. It's a 96% success. In order to advance and fast-track environmental authorizations for key infrastructure projects, we continue to undertake strategic environmental assessment, that which is known as a SEAS. We do this upfront, even before any development is actually applied for. South Africa is one of the top investment destinations globally, ladies and gentlemen. That is mainly for renewal, particularly for renewable energy, in fact. And over the past financial year, these SEAs were conducted for renewable energy, for shale gas, and electricity grid infrastructure. Work is also underway on the gas pipeline SEAs, and in the past financial year, we authorized in excess of 53,828 megawatts of renewable energy applications that's drawn from solar, wind, and hydro, concentrated solar and cogeneration. I'll now turn to our other focus areas, which is the three strategic approaches that I spoke about earlier on. Firstly, the Phakisa approach. In 2014, Operation Phakisa was launched as a new approach to enable government to implement its policies and programs better, faster, and more efficiently, a model that allows us to integrate our work for more effective outcomes. We have registered notable progress with regards to the Operation Phakisa Oceans Economy, Chemicals and Waste Phakisa, and Operation Phakisa Biodiversity. In continuing to advance with the Operation Phakisa in the oceans economy space, the President's pronouncement, ladies and gentlemen, in this year's SONA, we are unlocking, in line with that, we are unlocking the economic potential of South Africa's oceans, growing our GDP, and creating more sustainable jobs, all the while ensuring that our ocean and coastal systems are sustainably managed. Some of the highlights include the development of national guidelines towards the establishment of coastal management lines. This is intended to minimize risk that's posed by short and long-term coastal processes such as storm surges, erosion, and sea level rise. A national coastal access strategy is also under development to provide guidance around access for the public to closed-off beaches. In addition, a review of strategic plan on dealing with estuaries and a national status quo assessment are being conducted. Governance systems have been put in place, led by the Department of Environmental Affairs in planning and monitoring, as well as other leads department. We are actually looking at we have looked at the Marine Spatial Planning Bill, which was approved by the National Assembly on 24th of April, 2018, thanks to honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. It will now undergo procedures, this bill, of the National Council of Provinces, and we also continue to ensure enhancement of legislation for the Integrated Coastal and Oceans Management Act and our Oceans Act, which is our Oceans Act. We have finalized an associated marine spatial planning framework, and we are working on the development of sub-regional marine spatial management plans. In the first financial year, our researchers participated in the second International Indian Ocean Expedition, that's called the IIOE second expedition. This UN-led expedition, currently in its second year, because it goes on for 3 years, is aimed at improving our scientific knowledge of the Indian Ocean with a view to advancing oceans economy for South Africa and other member countries to the IORA. We continue to research, monitor, and study the oceans through our vessel, Miriam Makeba II, as well as our presence at the Antarctica and our ownership of the Marion and Prince Edward Islands. This we do jointly with the South African Weather Services Enhanced Observation Network Climate and Weather Oceans. Ladies and gentlemen, marine pollution is one of the biggest challenges that we face today and threatens fragile ecosystems. South Africa has a number of measures in place to tackle this problem. The National Pollution Laboratory, operated by the Walter Sisulu University, has been established, and laboratory work will soon be commencing. This will allow for in-depth analysis of the samples that could not be done in the field previously through the mobile laboratory that we've always used. In addition, South Africa is amongst the country to have endorsed the UN environmental program Clean Seas campaign. The campaign is aimed at stepping up the international, regional, and national efforts to combat marine litter. We have signed for this when I was in one of the UN meetings early this year. In implementing this campaign, I would like to announce the piloting of the department's Source to Sea initiative. It is an ambitious new strategy to investigate, combat pollution, in particular plastic pollution, which threatens both freshwater and marine ecosystems. Second area of biodiversity economy. Ladies and gentlemen and honorable members, South Africa has a multifaceted approach to the management of its rich natural heritage, One of the focuses on an inclusive value chain approach to the development of the biodiversity economy is in this area. Our communities are the primary custodians of our country's biodiversity. Strategic investment will ultimately enhance our domestic industrialization process as we produce final high-value products for the global market. Thanks to Minister Davis, I saw him here earlier on, for the IP that we have begun leading us to, because we do need intellectual properties. In line with the President's initiative drive, investment drive, we will be launching a biodiversity economy investment catalog that profiles investments ready biodiversity economy projects. Over the past year, we have also identified some 2 million hectares of land that's suitable for biodiversity economic activities and updated our national biodiversity economy strategy. Okay. You won't win. You know that very well. Over the past year, we have identified that number of hectares, and the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act has also been amended to specifically address the bioprospecting and biotrade sectors. In the past year, 292 permanent jobs have been created in the biotrade and bioprospecting sector, and 989 in wildlife economy pilot projects such as Balipie, Double Drift, and Folozi area. Our plans for the 2018-2019 financial year include the increasing of supply of indigenous species by adding at least 500 hectares of land to be activated with high-value species. This will be complemented by ongoing implementation of game donation and custodianship of policy framework. Within the policy framework, the South African National Parks remains a jewel in our conservation crown, continuing to attract record numbers of visitors. A total of 77,340 people visited the various parks for free during the Sun Parks Week in the last financial year. The number of participants in our environmental education program last financial year was at 8,495. Looking at the year ahead, ladies and gentlemen, Sun Parks has initiated a 5-year new revenue generation framework. It identifies projects to be initiated, ranging from new infrastructure plans and the new PPP arrangements to improving tourism products. The Rechtersveld Park Management Plan has been completed, while the Kruger National Park Management Plan is also undergoing the final review process. In support of the transformation of the wildlife sector, 5 buffaloes were donated to the Matsila community. You know how important the buffalo is, and very big animal. That's pricey. That to the trust in May 2017, and 65 different types of plain game were donated to the Gomani San Community Property Association last year, and a technical site inspection has also been done for a game donation to the Motlobatse CP area, over and above what we are aiming to deal with in the 2 million hectares that we have identified. Regarding chemicals and waste, which I now turn to, which is one of the most important emerging contributions to the generation of jobs in the green economy. Waste economy, ladies and gentlemen, has potential to address inequality, poverty alleviation, and creation of jobs. Dignifying the plight of waste pickers is furthermore moral responsibility that we have to address. Our approach to circular economy is to decouple material and resource efficiency from economic growth while dealing with the wasteful patterns of production and consumption. The Recycling Enterprise Support Program, known as RESP, has already made a material impact into the lives of 12 Black-owned and managed enterprises. The primary objective of this program is to provide developmental fund for projects in the form of startup grant. These projects are either startup or pre-existing enterprises, establishing buyback centers, material recovery facilities, construction and demolition solutions, and plastic palletization plants in line with the Operation Pakisa initiative. This has been allocated an amount of 194 million rand for the next 3 years. We show that we are serious. We're beginning even with allocation of funds. We are currently reviewing for the 3rd time a national waste management strategy. It will take into consideration our commitments to make waste minimization, the further development of the circular economy, and consider the capacity or resource implications for the implementation of waste management functions. With regards to the chemicals, Cabinet has recommended to Parliament that South Africa ratify the Minamata Convention on Mercury and the Kigali Amendments to Montreal Protocol on the protection of ozone layers. The Kigali Amendment will have core benefits for mitigating climate change and also the ozone depletion. It is worth noting that we met our targets to reduce our consumption of HCFCs by 20% in the year 2017 and 2018 financial year, and thanks to the industry for this. I would like to turn briefly to the issue of plastic pollution. As we celebrate World Environment Day that's themed Beating Plastic Pollution, we are committed to minimize plastic pollution and implement the recommendations of the Plastic Material Flow Study in line with the resolution taken at the UN General Assembly, respectively, and the UNIA Assembly, respectively, this year. We actually have conducted a plastic material study in collaboration with the industry, the South African Bureau of Standards, the National Regulator for Compulsory Specification, the National Treasury, and the Department of Health. We are consulting with the cosmetic industry to phase out the use of microbeads in the cosmetics. The Department of Environment, together with trade and industry, and its agencies, SABS and NRSCS, and the National Treasury, will also be reviewing the impact of implementation of plastic bag policies. We will continue to work with the packaging sector, that is in paper, glass, plastic, and metal, to increase over and above the 58% of amount of the waste diverted to landfill side, from landfill side. In response to the presidential Tuma Mina initiative, the department will be launching the Keep South Africa Clean campaign to mobilize every citizen to become environmentally conscious. We want to see South Africa free of litter and illegal dumping. The main purpose of this campaign is to change attitudes and behavior towards waste and enable people to take responsibility for keeping their communities clean, but at the same time make money where we can, because it is possible to make money and give dignity to those of our people who are still called for now waste pickers. They must get dignity. Now, turning to the environmental justice, in the air quality area, we will be conducting source apportionment studies, that in both the Vile Triangle, Eshet, and Highveld areas. The health impact assessment studies that we are conducting have now been completed. These two studies will be utilized in the review of our air quality management plans, and in partnership with industry in the resolving evident air pollution problems in these areas, we have agreed on requirements to implement the offset projects. Working with and through the South African Weather Services, we have also upgraded our South African Air Quality Information System, and South Africans can now view the state of air that they live in from the government monitoring network on their smartphones and other gadgets. I'm now getting to rhino poaching. I'd like to turn to this area and indicate that indeed we have been fighting. We remain cautiously optimistic that we are turning the tide on the scourge of rhino poaching. The number of rhinos poached last year was
Please conclude, Honorable Minister.
down to 1,028 from 10454 as the previous year. We've got money, yes, the fight is going on. We have established a downward trend. We are continuing to fight, we are not complacent. We are implementing the decisions of CITES as we go on, and we do believe that we are on track. We'll share the programs that we are dealing, as I can't complete within the time allocated. Conclusion, Honorable Chair, conserving the environment is not the responsibility of government alone. We all need to play a part, whether it is taking part in community cleanup campaigns, donating to a sun park programs, even if it's 5 Rand, Honorable Member, our choosing to recycle your waste. Change begins with individual action, no matter how small it is. Similarly, we call upon industry to do their part. President Ramaphosa has, through the Tuma Mina initiative, affirmed the need for us to take charge of our own destinations as citizens. And I encourage all the sectors and society to join hands with us as we keep South Africa clean. Tuma Mina for South Africa's sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Mapulane. Honorable Mapulane, take the podium.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister Thompson, Honorable Members of Parliament, invited guests, fellow South Africans. 3 months from today, on the 18th of July, our country will be celebrating the centenary of the founding father of our nation, an outstanding revolutionary patriot, an icon of our liberation struggle, Saparango Isitwalandwe, former President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. I therefore would like to take this opportunity to dedicate my input and my speech today to this towering giant of our revolution who dedicated his life to the cause of our freedom. Opening a conference on national environmental policy on the 17th of August in 1995 in Johannesburg, President Mandela reminded us that we must, and I open quote, we must have development, but it would be tragic if we pursued it in a way that exhausts our resources and denies our children and their children the prospect of a dignified existence. If our soil is lost, it is lost forever. If it is inappropriately used, the consequences are permanent, close quote. Chairperson, we emerged from the past apartheid South Africa characterized by poor environmental management, a past where environmental regulations were meant to protect white minority interests, a past where black people were deliberately settled next to the industrial areas so as to serve as a reservoir for cheap labor, and consequently were exposed to heavy industrial pollution. Limited access to electricity in the crowded informal settlements resulted in burning of fossil fuels like coal, further compromising air quality. True to the injunctions of Mandela's wise counsel, we need to address this legacy of our past. We must guarantee our children and their children a dignified existence. We must do this by paying particular attention to some of the urgent and critical tasks in air quality management, particularly in the priority areas. We need to ensure that there is full compliance with the promulgated minimum emission standards in line with the Air Quality Act by, among others, developing clear compliance roadmaps. We need to ensure strict monitoring of the process of technological acquisition and upgrade by industries which have been granted postponements. We need to do that by setting clear cut-off deadlines for any further consideration of postponement applications, because these postponements were never meant to be in perpetuity. On the transformation of wildlife economic, Chairperson, South Africa is endowed with remarkable richness of diversity and life forms. We are considered to be the third mega-diverse country in the world after the rainforest-rich Brazil and Indonesia. The variety and complexity of our biodiversity resources offers the most potential for economic growth, job creation, and transformation in the wildlife sector. The wildlife sector employs approximately 100,000 people across the value chain. The combined domestic and international hunting markets are estimated to be worth about 7.8 billion. However, the majority of our people are still excluded from the opportunities to own a significant stake in the wildlife economy. Our people continue to carry the historic scars from being dispossessed and displaced from their land to make way for national parks and other protected areas. And therefore, transformation of the wildlife economy to facilitate their participation and ownership is as much a process to restore their dignity as it is about putting food on the table. Transformation of the wildlife economy requires more than just tampering with the ownership patterns, management and control of the wildlife resources. It requires a complete overhaul of the meat consumption patterns. For instance, why is there such a glaring absence of game meat in many of our retail supermarkets and in shops and restaurants? Is it because there is no reliable supply of game meat, or is it about the demand for game meat is absent? And how about we utilize our game to feed our guests when we are hosting such events and gatherings like wedding, funerals, instead of utilizing beef, lamb, or even pork? If we really are serious about growing and transforming the wildlife economy, we should explore more innovative ways. We would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the department in supporting the Matsela Wildlife Economic Project, which the minister has spoken about, in Matsela Village in Limpopo and the Maibuye Game Reserve in KwaZulu-Natal. These are just two of the projects which are true models of transformation of the wildlife economy, which is rooted in community ownership. Very soon, Honorable Chairperson, the House will be considering a report from our committee on the donation of high-value species of animals worth over 100 million, which was made by the Northwest Government Department to few individuals, in particular 3 white males and 1 African male. This donation was done under the disguise of transforming the wildlife industry through game donation. But the reality is that this was nothing but an elaborate scheme to defraud the people of this country in order to benefit few individuals. The committee is resolute that those animals must be returned back to the provincial parks, and those responsible must be held to account. Honorable Chairperson, the committee would like, working with the department, to facilitate a national dialogue on the question of breeding of lions in captivity for hunting and lion bone and skeleton trade. Recent national and international developments around this particular subject have created the necessity to place this matter firmly on our national agenda. I have returned recently from the 65th General Assembly of the International Council for Game and Wildlife Conservation, known as the CIC in Madrid, Spain. 2 of our country's national associations, the Confederation of Hunting Associations of South Africa, CHASA, and the Professional Hunters Association of South Africa, PASA, were expelled from the CIC during that General Assembly for supporting captive prey lion hunting. Not the CIC of the EFF. 2 years ago in September, the World Congress of the International Union of Conservation in Nature, held in Honolulu in Hawaii, which I also happened to attend, was the first international body to take a resolution to call on the South African government to terminate the practice of breeding lions in captivity for purposes of canned hunting. Other major international organizations like the Safari Club, the Dallas Club, the Namibian Professional Hunting Association, and other associations have all distanced themselves from this practice. And therefore, Honorable Minister, South Africa is finding itself increasingly being isolated at important international platforms as a result of this policy stance. Even among those who, like us, are proponents of the principle of sustainable use of our natural resources. Major concerns are not only around ethical and fair chase hunting considerations, but more questions have been raised around the absence of scientific evidence showing the conservation value of canned hunting, as well as the application of the principle of precautionary approach. Turning to rhino poaching, Honorable Chair, rhino poaching continues to be a matter of great concern to our committee. We have asked SANParks to review its law target on rhino poaching because we would like SANParks to double its effort in turning the tide against what continues to be a national crisis. we would like once more to call for the strengthening of legislation by incorporating minimum sentences for rhino-related offenses to serve as strong deterrent for potential criminals killing this iconic species. Contrary to views held by some in our country, a groundbreaking research by academics at Birmingham University revealed that tougher prison sentences do reduce crime. Another study indicated that there is stronger evidence that increasing the certainty of punishment serves as a deterrent to crime. On the circular economy, and I'm happy that you mentioned it, Honorable Minister, the drive for extended producer responsibility, which started in 2012 with the publication of Integrated Industry Waste Management Plan, was intended to give impetus to the recycling economy and as far as waste tires are concerned. However, 6 years down the line, the percentage of waste tires diverted from landfill site remains unacceptably low, while the storage capacity of many waste tire depots are exceeded. The collapse of the reducer program has brought to the fore fundamental lessons the department has learned and will have to avoid going into the future. And therefore, in this context, we welcome the announcement made by the minister last Friday that the minister intends to consider the 4 industry waste tire management plans. As you know, Honorable Minister, the situation is not rosy either for other categories of waste. For example, the last official waste statistics show that the country has only been able to divert 10% of the total waste generated away from landfill site towards recycling. Plastic, again, remains a challenge. Everywhere you go, whether you are taking a walk on the beach, doing shopping in town, driving around in our townships, there is plastic everywhere, polluting lands, rivers, coasts, beaches, oceans, with devastating consequences to our environment.
Please conclude.
The introduction of the plastic levy in 2003 did little to alleviate the situation. Because our appetite for plastic has not dissipated, we continue to quite literally throw money away. Maybe we need, Honorable Minister, to follow the courageous and brave examples set in Benin, in Cameroon, in Ivory Coast, in Chad, and in Eritrea, and ban the use of plastic bags in South Africa. I would like to conclude by expressing my thanks and appreciation to all members of the Portfolio Committee, to the Minister and the Deputy Minister for your cooperation. We have not always agreed, but we have at all times respected our constitutional responsibilities. The ANC supports this budget vote, and I'd like to thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Hatebe.
All protocol observed. Honorable Chairperson, amid the growing concern over the air pollution and the dangers it presents to public health and to the protection of endangered species, the effects of climate change must be tackled head-on. A reasonable increase in funding for environmental protection was certainly warranted. However, if we look at the current budget for various environmental protection measures, one sees the dawn of the era of disappointment and environment neglect, despite the fact that the buffalo himself is at the helm. This budget is a clear indication that the ANC is failing to urgently implement sustainable, coordinated, and efficient strategies and to provide necessary funding to give effect to the constitutional provision that South African citizens are entitled to an environment that is not harmful to their health and well-being. In 2015, the South African National Biodiversity Institute, together with State SA and other departments, published a document outlining the health of the country's river and wetlands systems. This document paints a very scary picture. The data show that river health declined across the country between 1999 and 2011. Such crucial information ought to have triggered some action from the government. The DA is acutely aware that the healthy natural environment plays a fundamental role to South Africa's well-being. guided by the vision of one nation with one future built on freedom, fairness, and opportunity for all, the DA response will be to immediately institute a reasonable increase in the allocation for environment protection and climate change. I am mindful of the country's priorities that determine the government spending, but the environment protection is equally important. When we compare our environmental spending over the 25 countries belonging to the OECD, it amounts to 1.3%. Netherlands spends 3.2% and Japan 2.9%. Australia's government spent 2.4% of its total budget on environment protection, while the United Kingdom devoted 1.8%. South Africa deserves a better environment too. Honorable Chairperson, I would like to mention just a few critical interventions the DA would like to institute. First, we would strive to meet the National Climate Change Response Policy target of reducing emissions by 34% by 2020 and 42% by 2025. To do this, we would strengthen the capacity of local government to respond to climate change with the emphasis on human resource and institutional framework. On this note, I would like to commend the City of Johannesburg and IBM Research in their project, which uses machine learning and analytics to measure several air quality factors, focus potential poor air quality events, and can be even used to pinpoint the culprits. Secondly, we would acquire and maintain radar capability to enable weather observation network that meets today's needs. Thirdly, we would establish an early warning and response system to improve preparedness and adaptive capacity of local communities, drawing on scientific and local communities. Chairperson, the classical example is the Western Cape Disaster Management Center. It's a single environment where all disaster management activities can be planned for and coordinated in the integrated manner. To the question about the Honorable Mapulane of strengthening the legislation, we will amend Part 3 of Schedule 2 of Criminal Law Amendment of 102 of 1997 by adding the following offenses to the list. Any offense referred to the NIMBA Act number 10 of 2004, if it is proved, 1, that the listed threatened or protected species involved is a rhino or elephant, or B, the value of the listed threatened or protected species or product or the derivative in question involves amount of more than 100,000, or C, the value of the listed threatened or protected species or product or derivative in question involves an amount of more than 10,000. These are but a few examples of changes the South Africa needs. In conclusion, and to quote the former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, I quote, saving our planet, lifting our people out of poverty, advancing economic growth, these are one and the same fight. We must connect the dots between climate change, water scarcity, energy shortages, global health, food security, women's empowerment. Solution to a problem must be solution to all. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Kalisa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honorable Chairperson, one of the most tragic consequences of our fixation with consumer-driven development has been our inability to imagine and implement a developmental program that prioritizes the protection of the integrity of our ecosystem. We face challenges of global warming and climate variability, loss of biodiversity, deforestation, desertification, land degradation, waste and littering, population growth, urbanization, pollution, poverty, and health hazards. While South Africa is seen to be doing more than its counterparts in engendering an environmental awareness ethic, we can do better and ought to do better, only if we can eliminate corruption and narrow short-termism in the manner the department does its operation. You have entities such as the Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism Agency, which is managed as a personal property of their CEO, Vuyani Daimani, who is looting that institution to bankruptcy. Entities such as this one prevent us from focusing on the bigger picture. These problems present a challenge to our government to think outside the box and try and mainstream environmental protection into the functioning of each and every department. This must be done with the firm appreciation of the fact that well-being of our ecosystem is a developmental issue and not a peripheral issue left only to white scientists who are doing all in their power to prevent new black scientists from emerging. To do this, we must ensure that at the national level, the different agencies and players, both within and outside government, need to strengthen coordination and implementation of key intervention in different sectors in both rural and urban areas. There was once a program between your Protected Area Directorate, the Spatial Planning Directorate at the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, and the Policy Directorate at SANBI, looking at coordinating work done on land reform sites that are also critical biodiversity areas. You unfortunately discontinued this program. It is programs like those that are needed across the board to streamline ecological awareness across departments and elevate thinking about the environment to be thinking about the development. At the African regional and international level, there is a need for progressive Pan-Africanism and progressive internationalism to address geopolitical forces and issues that contribute to the underdevelopment of the African region. We need not to pussyfooting on the issue of climate change and global warming. In the African continent, we need to champion the need of environmental responsible development, and that this awareness must drive our approach to issues of international trade, poverty alleviation, and economic policies. So, our dissatisfaction with this performance of this department to date is that it has been too narrow in its focus, concerned only with sector-specific challenges, and not realizing that these challenges are of an intersectoral nature. The department must therefore rethink its place in the developmental evolution of this country. At this moment, you failed dismally to do so, and we reject this budget. Thank you.
Honorable Singh. Honorable Singh. Honorable members, please let us allow other members to be heard.
Thank you, Chair. I was waiting for your command. Chairperson, I wish I could cut myself into different parts and serve on this Environmental Affairs Committee. But unfortunately, with so many other commitments, I'm not able to. Because I see in the Chairperson, Honorable Mapulana, and from his delivery here, a wildlife activist. And I can see that wildlife issues are discussed in your committee. Having said that, Honorable Mapulana, you spoke about the economic value of wildlife. It starts with the protection and conservation of wildlife. And therefore, I'm going to dedicate my speech to the birds and the bees and not air pollution and waste management, because those matters, the entities are handled extremely well by the department and all its managers. On Saturday, the 10th of March, the IFP received a memorandum of intent presented by an organization called Beauty Without Cruelty, together with 86 other NGOs and animal welfare organizations, in a call for the incorporation of the animal sentience into our applicable domestic laws and regulations. The petition was handed over under the signature of my leader, Honorable Buthelezi, but unfortunately, Minister, your department and Agriculture, of Forestries and Fisheries have not acknowledged receipt of that correspondence. And we'd like you to look at it and please try and do something about it. I can make a copy available if you don't have it. Honorable Mapulane also spoke about rhino poaching. And the issue about rhino poaching, and Minister, you are cautiously optimistic about solutions. The issue is that the biggest challenge we face in South Africa in respect of rhino poaching crisis is not from the poachers themselves, but rather from corruption that keeps poachers in a position from which they are able to ply their horrendous illicit trade. I think we are all aware of the matter that's taking place in the court in the northern KwaZulu-Natal. It starts tomorrow, where one Papatwa, Mr. Gwala, was charged. He was charged in 2014, but that matter is only coming to court now. And there is allegations of corruption within the judicial system itself. And this person is known to be the kingpin of rhino horn poaching in South Africa. Now, Honorable Minister, justice is not your portfolio, but if there is inaction in justice, it impacts on our conservation agenda. And you know, you need to talk to your colleague, and I'm going to have to leave after I speak to go and speak in the justice portfolio downstairs. So I'm going to raise it. I'm going to say the same thing. As far as the lion conservation that you spoke about, Honorable Mapulane, the IFP deploys the continued position and support of our support in allowing captive lion breeding and lion bone trade in South Africa. Despite no credible basis in science or socioeconomic benefits to the South African people, we persist in what can be justifiably argued as the decimation of our wild lion populations through allowing the continued commodification of this iconic African apex predator. The practice is nothing more, we believe, than a commodification of an apex African predator for the pecuniary benefit of a handful of people at great and distressing expense to brand South Africa. Honorable Chairperson, we'd also like to see the department taking steps towards minimizing the risk of poisoning to migratory birds, as we are aware that South Africa is now a signatory to the Convention for Migratory Species, where it was decided that it was vital to bring an end to the use of lead ammunition. Finally, Honorable Chairperson, good governance depends on the rule of law, and the rule of law depends upon effective compliance. None are sufficient alone, but together they form an indivisible force that is essential for survival and for sustainable development. And it is for that reason, Honorable Chairperson, and Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, that we will support the budget of this department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Kubisa.
Chairperson, thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, guests. Thank you for this opportunity. The mandate of this department is to ensure the protection of the environmental and natural resources, balance with sustainable development and equitable distribution of benefits derived from natural resources for current and future generations. And in light of this mandate, cognizance is also taken to the right of the nation to an environment that is not harmful to their health and well-being as provided in Section 24B of our Constitution. Chairperson, the National Freedom Party supports this budget. We are concerned, however, about the sizable reductions in 3 sub-programs. There is Protected Area Systems Management, Ismangaliso Wetland Park Authority, and the South African National Parks, which have experienced reductions of 14 million rand, 3.4 million and 8.5 million rand respectively. This is concerning because these programs, Honorable Minister, play a critical role in protecting the country's biodiversity. And also, Chairperson, I understand that there are various challenges that are facing this department. I know that the challenges are regional and also international. Challenges like rhino poaching, whereby our rhinos are poached and taken, and the horns are taken abroad. And sometimes in that regard, you find that there is collusion. I don't know who does it, but somebody says. And also the whole issue, Chairperson, of the protection of indigenous species. Honorable Minister, you have alluded to the fact that there is legislation in the pipeline with regard to climate change, global warming, etc. Because it's only through legislation that some of the things could be done. And of course, ensuring that legislation is enforced as well. There are also challenges with regard to encroachment in certain protected areas. And these encroachments, where we find that even the rangers are being killed, and it has happened a number of times. And the whole issue of waste management and also the mitigation of carbon dioxide emission, and also working with our refineries to ensure that we deal with that.
Please
And also ensuring that we also deal with people who cause some harms in our oceans, and you've referred to that, Minister. And also we know that these challenges could be done, for instance, through the National Climate Report Bill, which we feel that it must be hastened quickly. The constant drought and floods that occur pose a huge challenge. Hence, the dissemination of information is very crucial, Honorable Minister, and it's a matter that must be done to our townships, rural areas, and also to those people along the river banks, because sometimes they die because they don't have knowledge. Okugcina-ke sihlalo ngifisa ukusho ukuthi enye inselelo esibhekene nayo sihlalo ukuba ey'ndaweni zamapaki nasey'ndaweni egcina nezonga imvelo. Ey'ndaweni zabaholi bomdabu kufika abantu benza ingcebo bahambe nomnotho kodwa abaholi bomdabu nezizwe zabo bangazuzi lutho. Kungabikho namathuba emisebenzi abawatshalayo ekubeni kunentsha yethu nabesifazane abadinga amathuba emisebenzi nokuthi kuthuthukise umnotho kulezo y'ndawo lapho besuke befike khona. And we also want to see the department create those jobs that are promised, 39,991 full-time jobs, and also support SMEs, and also deal with issue of poverty alleviation. We support the budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Deputy Minister.
Angbonge Sihlalo, our Minister, Umam Edna Molewa, MECs that are present here today, our Chairperson, Ubaba Umapulane, members of the Portfolio Committee, members of Parliament, our guests, our chief executives of public entities that are here with us. Is there something wrong? Oh, okay. Ladies and gentlemen,
Honorable Mkhali.
Today is the first time the international community is marking the International Day of Living Together in Peace. It is a day in which all nations and people of the world should strive to find ways and means of respecting one another, living in harmony without conflict. In 4 days, we will also mark Africa Day, a day which provides us with an opportunity to reconnect and recommit ourselves to building a better Africa and a better world for all our people. In working towards achieving peace globally and to improving the lives of our people, conservation of the environment should play an important role. Without the sustainable use of our rich and abundant natural resources, we will decimate our environment, an act that will be to the detriment of humankind. Ngamanye amazwi uma singayigadi imvelo sithi nje kafishano imvelo iyogcina ishabalele ngifuna sikwazi ukuthi ukushabalala kwemvelo kuyoba ukushabalalwa kwethu uqobo. To address the negative impacts of climate change, particularly the increase of extreme weather conditions in our country, we have introduced a number of measures to ensure that all our people, children, women, the elderly, and the poor communities are able to deal with the impacts of drought, flooding, and other extreme weather events on crops and food supplies, infrastructure, and livelihoods as well. During the SONA in February, our President, Ramaphosa, highlighted a number of actions and commitments to create jobs and address the plight of our youth. The department has and will continue to create work opportunities through a number of environmental programs being rolled out. Amongst the highlights achieved in the past financial year include the creation of 71,948 work opportunities and 28,243 full-time equivalents created, with more than 60% of these participants being youth and women. 140 wetlands have been rehabilitated as part of the Working for Water efforts to achieve the goal of land degradation neutrality in South Africa, placing 56,660 hectares of land under rehabilitation and restoration, also providing initial treatment to 171,198 hectares of land invaded by invasive species, and undertaking follow-up treatment on 601,944 hectares of land. The department works with all provinces, municipalities, community-based organizations, traditional authorities, baba we-EFF, siyasebenzisana kakhulu namakhosi, and public entities to implement environmental programs. In
On a point
2017,
of order, Chair.
the working
Honorable Minister, just take a seat. Oh, no, there's no seat.
Ngiyaxolisa,
Cela ubuza Chair ukuthi ngubani ubaba we-EFF la endlini.
No, Honorable Khalisa.
Xolisa.
Khalisa.
Maluju.
No, honorable members, please order, order,
Maluju,
order.
Maluju, baba
Order,
we-EFF, benkonda uba
Deputy
bukhubisa.
Minister, order,
Xolisa.
order. No, Honorable Khalisa.
Sendingubaba manje and say honorable member, Chair.
No, Xolisile. Yeah. Qhubeka, Honorable Minister.
Senginyathele emsileni.
Chair,
Honorable Mkhaliphi.
Chair, we spoke about this thing in the Chief Whip Forum.
Honorable members, please let us hear.
Chair, we spoke about this thing in the Chief Whip Forum. So the members of the ANC must behave.
What?
Because on our rules, we don't have Baba, Mkulu, Gogo, EFF here. We have members. So I don't think it will be
No,
very
but-
respectful to say Gogo, EFF, Mkulu,
But-
EFF, Mfana, EFF. We are all honorable members.
Honorable Mkhaliphi.
Ezwakala benkonda ukuthi
Honorable members, please let us allow the Deputy Minister to be heard, please.
angihoxe
Honorable
angihoxe
Mkhaliphi,
honorable
Honorable
member.
Deputy Minister, just hold on. Honorable Mkhaliphi, uhoxisile. Angiyiboni ke lento oyifuna ukuyenza ke manje. Ya, asiqhubekeke. Masiqhubekeke. Honorable Minister.
Honorable Kubisa. In 2017, the Working on Fire program was confronted with blazing fires along the Garden Route, most notably in Knysna. The runaway fires that began on the 7th of June and burned along a 300-kilometer fire line for nearly 2 weeks, destroyed 21,500 hectares of land, which stretched from Great Brank to outside Port Elizabeth. Members of the Working on Fire team spent almost 2 weeks fighting these blazing fires. Tragically, 6 lives were lost. Infrastructure damage ran into billions of rands, and over 2,500 jobs were affected, impacting on the economy of the towns along the route. Greater advocacy and awareness programs must continue in an effort to minimize the risk of future fires in areas where highly flammable alien invasive vegetation is present. Let me just touch a bit on the Working for Coast infrastructure. Further development of coastal infrastructure will be undertaken in this financial year. This includes improved community access to the coast. Boat launching sites will be constructed to support the newly permitted areas for boat-based whale watching and shark diving as well. New policies on boat-based whale watching and shark cage diving were developed to enable participation from previously disadvantaged people and change the status quo. Ngiyafuna ukusho ukuthi le program ezonikeza abantu bakithi amathuba ukuthi nabo singababoni sebe abantu nje aba cleaner ikephe. Sishintshile ipolice ukuthi nabo bakwazi ukuba ama-owners ama-boats. Bangabi nje abashaneli bama-boats. Sithi maba-own bakwazi ukuparticipate. Bakwazi ukuparticipate nabo ukuze basheshe bafike la befuna ukufuna khona. Yabona uma usashanela uzokuthatha isikhashana ukuthi ufike lapha kuloya mnotho. This year, the department, in collaboration with protected areas management authorities and their associated provinces, will be hosting the 8th National People and Parks Conference. This initiative continues to stand out as a government flagship program aimed at transforming protected areas for the benefit of local communities through unlocking the economic potential thereof. To this date, a number of co-management agreements have been concluded. Ilang dideka khona-ke, Honorable Kubisa, umuthi le nhlelo zethu azifiki emakhosini. Mhlambe kofuna sixoxisane ukuthi amakhosi aba kanjani ingxenye ngoba sithi lama protected areas nalama parks obukhuluma ngawo osimangaliso sithi cha nabo abantu imphakathi engawabukeli kude abawa co-manage nama management authorities ngamanye amazwi nabasobezoba ingxenye yalomnotho bangawubukeli nje kude. Kofuna mhlambe sibonisana ukuthi amakhosi nondaba ezitha baba kanjani ingxenye yalezi nhlelo. The People and Parks projects also contribute towards the expansion of the conservation estate with associated infrastructure, including community parks, lodges, and ancillary amenities to make these viable economic enterprises. Communities will be capacitated to engage actively in the co-management of protected areas. Lastly, land restitution processes in and around protected areas present opportunities for conservation as well as empowerment. The environment sector is ideally placed to increase the ownership percentage of Black women, the youth, and communities in our economy through the identification of economic opportunities that are associated with sustainable use of a diverse range of natural resources or biodiversity. We recognize biodiversity as a basis for transformation
Please
and
conclude, Honorable
sustainable
Deputy Minister.
development. Gafishane ke sithi imphakathi yethu osomabhizinisi mabasijoyine kulo mshikashika wethu wokwenza isiqiniseko ukuthi imvelo yethu yongeke. We are saying that good business is business that should not be harmful to the environment, to the people that live around the area, and to everybody at large. Ngiyabonga. Sla.
Siyabonga kakhulu mhlonishwa. Honorable Vese.
Thank you, Chairperson. Our natural resources are becoming scarcer by the day. We face severe droughts. And in the midst thereof, we should admit to each other that climate change is a reality and not only a buzzword that we use at conferences and in speeches. It is actually a reality on the ground and needs to be addressed. The Green Scorpions, Honourable Chairperson, are not acting efficiently regarding especially pollution of water sources. And the department is also not reacting in this regard. In many of our municipalities, raw sewage ends up in dams and rivers, polluting our sources of drinking water. Whilst we are facing the scarcity of water and the effects of climate change, this is unacceptable. Examples of this is in Daumas, where the Bronkhorstspruit Dam is being polluted by raw sewage because of deteriorating infrastructure. The same in Mafube, where sewage are flowing into the Volga River and from there into the Fold Dam, polluting the drinking water of millions of people, including the most of Gauteng. Complaints laid with the department and with the Green Scorpions render no results. The consideration of mining and exploration licenses raises concern, also taking into regard our scarce resources. In recent cases, exploration rights were rewarded by the department and overturned by courts. This is unnecessary litigation and a waste of taxpayer money. In those cases, it was quite clear that those activities would pollute.
Chairperson, could you request the honourable members in the box over there to please reduce their voices?
Much honourable member. Members, now I'm not sure, I noticed that there are some honourable members sitting in the box there, but in fact all the honourable members should be above the box. So if there are any there, come forward. If you are guests, then you've been invited to listen and observe, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Those cases where the rights were overturned by the courts were a waste of taxpayer money. In those cases, it was quite clear that those activities of exploration and hydro-splitting would pollute underground water and affect drinking water sources and also agriculture in a detrimental effect. It is completely unacceptable that these licenses are awarded to companies just on a basis of economic activity and not taking the environment into account. Minister, we need to address this. Your department cannot allow this activity to take place. Whilst we have scarce resources, we cannot afford to look like Texas one day. And go to Texas, where these activities took place for many years, and go look at the complete irreversible effects of hydro-splitting and exploration.
1 minute left.
Your department needs to stop this. Your department needs to take research into account and the environment into account. This department has a very important function, and Minister, you need to get your house in order. The department cannot be one that are that are detrimentally affected by mismanagement and neglect of officials. get your department in order. Without an environment that's protected, all our other activities, all government's activities, are going to waste and will not render any fruits. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Nyambi.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers present here, Honorable Members, guests on the gallery, Lochan. Honorable Chair, allow me to dedicate this year's budget vote on behalf of the ANC to our first democratically elected president, Utata Nelson Mandela, who would have turned 100 years old this year. Shifana Nawe. An exemplary leader and the father of the nation, who walked out of the Victor Verster prison after spending 27 years of incarceration fighting for the freedom of our people, harboring to trace of bitterness and animosity to those who had placed him behind bars. His exemplary statute taught us to be selfless and dedicated in pursuit of the betterment of our life, of our people. Through the policies and programs of our glorious movement, the ANC will ensure that we credence to Tata's vision to make tomorrow better than today. Biodiversity is a variability among living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems, and the ecological complexes of which they are part. This includes diversity with species, between species, and of ecosystem. In other words, biodiversity refers to the wide variety of species on Earth, whether they are plants, animals, or microscopic organisms, which are vital to keep the world's many ecosystems healthy, balanced, and thriving. Biodiversity is therefore the foundation of life on Earth, as it ensures natural sustainability for all life by, for example, guaranteeing more abundant crops and fresher air. In a nutshell, biodiversity is essential for sustaining the natural ecosystem on which humans and all life depend. More than 3 billion people depend on marine and coastal biodiversity, while more than 1.6 billion people rely on forests for their livelihood globally. The loss of biodiversity affects the lives of more than 1 billion people living in dry land. It is important to note that these global estimates also include South African statistics for biodiversity dependence. South Africa joined other nations of the world on observing 2010 as an International Year of Biodiversity. This was an opportunity to heighten awareness on biodiversity, and this is consistently carried out in partnership with the South African Nation Parks. This is a celebration of life on Earth and recognition of links between biodiversity, ecosystem service, and human well-being. Ngithanda ukukhumbuza lendlu ukuthi ingxenye lenkulu yemphakathi yethu yasemakhaya yethembele kudo tonke letitshalo netilwanyane letiphilayo ngokuhlukahlukana kwato lekuthiwa i-biodiversity ngelimi likaGeorge. Kuthi bangenise imali baphindze bazame kwakha imisebenzi yokusebenzisa tona letitshalo netilwanyane letiphilayo. Bakwenwa lokhu ngokusebenzisa ema-agents ekonga la njenge-Sunpark, isimangaliso Wet Park Authority, the Sunbee, netikhungo tekuvikela tetifundza njenge-ezemvelo Wildlife, Cape Nature, Eastern Cape Nature, Northwest Park Board, netekuvakasha tasempumalanga kanye ne-Parks Agency kulamanye awo. Litiko letesimonzawo, luhlelo lwe-biodiversity nekonga kanye neluhlelo lwesimonzawo tiniketa imisebenzi tikwelinyenti lebantu bethu, ikakhulukati kubomake nebantwana nabantu labasha. Leli tiko lidlala inzima lebalulekile yokucedza buphuya nekungalingani. Ngekwena njalo i-biodiversity isebenza ngekomshwalense, ivikela labaphuyile ukuthi bangaphuyi kakhulu. Sithandza kubonga lenzima ledlalwa ngumkhakha wekonga nengoni yangasese, balimi bemfuyo yesiganga, tikhungo lececeshelwe kutingela, nabaletha kuphatheka kahle kwenzalo, bete kutsi live letfu silitfokotele. For South Africa, growing the secular economy and broadening access of the opportunities, it represents indeed fundamental part of our government's program of radical socio-economic transformation. This requires first a radical rethink of our perception of waste. It is a resource with value once it recovered, reduced, reused, and recycled, and provide the opportunity for beneficiaries, enterprise development, and innovation. Given the potential to significantly scale up green economy initiative in this sector, we are preparing to host a chemical and waste pakamisa that will see annual waste corridor for 2017 taking the form of chemicals and waste circular economy lab program. At this, we are also going to planning from high level to a lower level. In taking the industrial waste management plan forward, we are currently evaluating the inputs received from various sectors. In this regard, we are greatly esteem the work that the department as well as SANPACs are doing in transforming the biodiversity economy in the spirit of the Freedom Charter, which explicitly states that people shall share people shall share in the economies in the country's wealth. We further note that the wonderful work that Isimangaliso Wetland Park Authority is doing in ensuring the sustainability of our unique World Heritage Site, especially its revenue sharing model with the land claims. We gratefully note the cutting edge research that the SANPI is doing to inform our biodiversity conservation initiatives. It is also strategic research support and output that shape our biodiversity conservation policies. You are truly the big deal in greater scheme of things. Honorable Minister Mulewa, Honorable Deputy Minister Thompson, and Director General of the Department, Ms. Taba, as well as the staff of the department that makes up the entire environmental team. We would like to thank you heartily for your great sense of stewardship in protecting our environmental assets. Despite the ever-growing challenge of poaching in our national park, we put our hands on deck by asking this august House to approve the department's budget. I thank you.
Honorable Purdon.
Honorable Chair, honorable members, all our guests in the gallery, good afternoon to you all. Goeiemiddag, molweni nonke. We are gathered here today to analyze a budget for environmental affairs of 7.1 billion. This is not even 1% of South Africa's total budget. Not even 1%. This hardly seems fair as our environment is under significant pressure from a rapidly increasing population, water scarcity, and climate change. A healthy environment depends on clean water, clean energy, and clean air, and is critical for ensuring the health of all the citizens of South Africa. It is against this background that we take a closer look at our budget and how we should be caring for our precious environment. The report tells us that although the 7.1 billion is up from last year's 6.8 billion, there is a significant budget reduction in real rand terms after inflation has been taken into account. Reduced funding will severely hamper efforts to sustain our country's biodiversity and the department's ability to enforce compliance with legislation. The report also tells us that the department has not tabled its annual report to Parliament on time for the past 2 consecutive years. This is totally unacceptable, and the department must take the necessary measures to ensure this never happens again. Other political issues relegate environmental issues, such as air quality and rhino poaching, to small articles in the middle of newspapers. Honorable Chair, just recently the news has been filled.
Honorable Purdon, just a minute. Can that box at the bottom please refrain from running around and engaging in conversation? You are guests here. You are guests here.
Honorable Chair.
Yes, do proceed.
Bakhona abanye bangqola lapha namhlanje. Pha ngasemva. Nalapha kule cala ngapha. Bangqola namhlanje ngoba ku2019 bazokhala pha ngaphandle. Pha ngaphandle. The report also tells us that the department has not tabled its annual report. I have to mention that other political issues relegate environmental issues to the small of newspapers. But just recently, the news has been filled with alarming reports from the Northwest Province. A premier gone rogue. Illegal game donations have dominated headlines, and just last week, that Premier Supra and his unsavory team wanted to disband the provincial parks. They are busy ramming through legislation in this respect as we speak. Now, we, the DA, are watching proceedings closely.
Allow the speaker to be
We will
heard.
keep asking questions. Honourable members and the public at large need to know that there's a strong connection between the Northwest Province and environmental affairs. Minister Malewa is a former Premier of the Northwest. Our chairperson is from the Northwest. The newly appointed head of Simangaliso Wetland Park, Professor Karodia, also from Northwest, as does fellow board member Satish Rupa. Now, honourable members, environmental affairs needs good, clean governance and administration, and we sincerely hope that our ministry and department have not been tainted by the toxic developments in the Northwest.
1 minute.
The late Patrick Cole once wrote that it is a sad fact that many South Africans suffer from denialism, or in other words, an immune syndrome. We have become immune to the fact that our roads over Easter and December have become killing fields. We have become immune to shocking education results, high levels of crime, rampant corruption, and the inefficiency of the public service. But we must never become immune to the fact that the escalation in rhino poaching has increased dramatically since 2000. We must never become immune to poor air quality in many areas of South Africa, which severely affects the health of many of our citizens. When the country is rewarded next year with a predominantly blue government, we the DA will improve the coordination between the various organizations in the state security.
Thank you. Thank you. Just close off now. Close off. Honourable Purdon, can you please close
All of these
off?
issues and concerns revolve around political will. And Al Gore said, political will is a renewable source. So I can assure everyone here today, and all South Africans not present here today, that a DA-led government will give environmental affairs the priority it deserves. We owe it to our people, and above all, we have a duty to protect future generations. Inkosi kakhulu. Thank you.
Honourable Luyenge.
Honourable Chairperson, allow me to greet all ministers and deputy ministers that are here present, honourable members of this House, guests, the leadership of the department and their entities. In the name of the African National Congress, I'm standing here to say we're appealing to this House to adopt this budget of this department because of its importance. In his poem, The Worship of Nature, John Greenleaf Whittier depicts the movement of the sea and nature in general as a form of worship. He writes, and I quote, "Prayer is made and praise is given. By all things near and far, the ocean looketh up to heaven and mirrors every star. Its waves are kneeling on the strand, and kneels the human knee, their white locks bowing to the sand, the priesthood of the sea. They pour their glittering treasures forth, their gifts of pearl they bring, and all the listening hills of earth take up the song they sing. So nature keeps the relevant frame with which her years began, and all her signs and voices shame the prayerless heartman," unquote. This poem uses vivid imagery to bring to life the beauty, the power and generosity of the ocean. Nature bows to the great oceans that brings gifts life and sustenance in abundance to billions of God's humble creatures. This has been order of things on earth until the arrival of men, especially the prayerless capitalists. We of the progressive school of thought seek to design government policies in such a way that we use resources of our oceans for social and economical upliftment of the people in a sustainable way. Based to ready to govern policy document, our negotiators were able to insert the rights of the environment in the Bill of Rights in our constitution. In this regard, we were the leaders among the countries of the world. The purpose of the Oceans and Coast Program is to promote, manage, and provide strategic leadership on oceans and coastal conservation. The program sets out our government strategic objectives, as we have recognized that ocean and coastal ecosystems are important as they directly and indirectly impact on human livelihoods, food security, and agriculture, trade, and industry. Nearly a third of South Africa's population lives in the coast. Poverty, unemployment, and inequality vary considerably across South Africa's coastal regions owing to the legacy of apartheid. The ANC has transformed South Africa's approach to oceans from being predominantly conservation-focused, biophysical, and bureaucratic to one that is more participatory in nature and driven by human development imperatives and sustainable livelihoods objectives. These efforts culminated in the Integrated Coastal Management Act of 2008, which established South Africa's first statutory requirements for integrated coastal and estuarine management. The oceans are a key source of protein both locally and globally. Seafood now accounts for almost 17% of the global population's intake of protein. Although not as economically important as agriculture, fisheries contribute 0.5% to South Africa's GDP and also play an important role in meeting food security needs and providing livelihoods for more than 100,000 South Africans. We call on government to help preserve these communities. Presently, a number of our country's marine resources are overexploited, which results in a loss of potential sources of food, livelihoods, and income, as well as the loss of the traditional fishing culture associated with South Africa's coastal communities. There is a growing awareness of the environmental impact of fishing on our oceans, and it is heartening that consumers and retailers are alike increasingly seeking sustainable seafood alternatives. Honorable Chairperson, consumers are becoming more aware of sustainable seafood challenges and are holding their seafood vendors accountable for sustainability of the seafood they are selling. Major seafood suppliers, restaurant chains, and retailers have also started to respond to growing markets for sustainable seafood by setting standards and adopting credible oceans sustainability strategies. Oceans and coasts provide many valuable services and uses through both extractive and non-extractive activities. I would like to remind the House that South Africa's coastline is rich in mineral resources that are mined, particularly in Namakwa district of the Northern Cape. Some activities such as sand mining are being undertaken illegally outside the policy framework of government. This needs to be arrested, Honorable Minister. It is important to note that while the mandate for fisheries has moved to the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, the regulatory framework for sustainable management of our marine environment fall within the ambit of environmental affairs. Maritime transport is vital to the world's economy, as over 90% of the world's trade is carried by the sea. In fact, 98% of our country's exports are carried by sea. Coastal tourism generates approximately 13.5 billion rands to our economy annually. There is a great potential for energy and other uses of the oceans. Honorable Minister, the Deputy Minister has actually attributed to the importance of the community participation in the activities of the department, of which we appreciate as the ANC, because we firmly believe that one of the important attributes of a developmental state is the active participation of communities in their own development. I thank you.
Honorable Steenkamp.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Now, last year I said the following. Redisa was sold to South Africa as the holy grail and the solution to our ever-growing tyre problem. The Department of Environmental Affairs' failure to monitor and manage Redisa allowed Redisa's managing directors to manage a little bit too much into their own pockets. So, this year, now we have the Waste Management Bureau, which will fix all the mistakes of the department or that they made with Redisa, so we are told. But since taking over, not much has improved. On the contrary, and there's quite a few concerns. For example, the departmental official that was responsible for monitoring Redisa left the department under a cloud, but now the same person is back as a consultant to this new bureau, being paid massive amounts. Staff has been appointed, but no CEO. The salary scales of the Waste Management Bureau staff are another issue. Why are they paid so much more than higher-ranking departmental officials? The DG of the department is acting CEO of the Waste Bureau, which means she's the only one that can sign off when money needs to be spent. The DA believes that this leaves a bit too much room for error. Plans to the Waste Management Bureau submitted by industry have been gathering dust on the DG's desk since December of 2017. Now, to date, no plan or plans have been approved, rendering the Waste Management Bureau kind of useless. So the Bureau's depots are a joke, just by the way. Tyres are diverted from landfills to these depots, which are essentially now glorified, super expensive tyre landfills. There's no direction as to what will happen, yet the Bureau has already started spending millions. Shame on you. Moving to recycling, this government has absolutely no direction on recycling, no plan to reduce waste going to landfills, and even less of a clue as to how to reduce landfills themselves in the near future in South Africa. Turning to plastic. Minister, you mentioned it, but why isn't plastic a national priority? Why doesn't it have a monetary value? And why are we quiet on drastically reducing plastic in South Africa, more specifically, single-use plastic? It's an international crisis. South Africa is quiet. One solution to massive landfills is sustainable recycling, but yet this ANC government's approach to recycling is closed, it's narrow-minded, and it is non-inclusive. Throwing another levy at the problem won't fix anything either.
1 minute.
The DA has a solution, because under a DA government, we will change the way the department is administrating waste. We will give waste a sufficient value which will create and aid an ever-growing recycling culture and create much-needed jobs for the 9.5 million South Africans that are unemployed. We will incentivize it so that the private sector will become involved, thereby creating more jobs, more opportunities, and more opportunities for jobs to be created along the line.
Please close off.
In this way, the department will be enabled to create an open, inclusive environment. And the DA calls on the minister, therefore, to immediately, publicly declare war on waste. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Makubele.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Honorable Minister of Environmental Affairs, all ministers present, Deputy Minister of Environmental Affairs in particular, and all other Deputy Ministers, Members of Parliament, distinguished guests in the gallery, comrades and compatriots, fellow South Africans. I greet you all this afternoon in this departmental budget vote of environmental affairs in honor of both the democratically elected President of South Africa, the late Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, and the late Umama Nontsikelelo Albertina Sisulu. In the same breath, our hearts go to the Palestinians who currently are confronted by miserable conditions imposed upon them by dark, evil, and oppressive forces. These anti-apartheid activists and our forefathers and foremothers represented a generation of brave men and women who ushered the present era of democracy, which is characterized by freedom, justice, and progress that our country is slowly but surely cementing on a daily basis. We must therefore, as a nation, forever cherish their contributions and the values they stood for and worked hard to inculcate both in us and future generations who are yet to come. Some of the issues raised here by few parties do warrant some response. Even before I proceed with my speech, Honorable Chairperson, House Chairperson, Honorable Hadebe does indicate that if, and that is if the DA was one day to be governing South Africa, they are going to strengthen the capacity of local government sphere.
Let's hear the speaker.
Highlighting in that space is the efforts by the Joburg City. And truth be told, the dire situation of many of our local government authorities was a deliberate policy design of apartheid, of which the DA's predecessors are to blame.
Just a minute.
The ANC
One moment, Honorable Makubela. Now, anyone sitting in that box is a guest. I've asked all members to come out of that box because it's very difficult to actually chair the House when I'm not sure if you're a guest or a member. That is reserved for guests. So please, if you are a member, come out of that box or otherwise refrain from acting like a member. Thank you. And will all the members on the other side of the box come out as well? Right. I'm sorry about that, Honourable Makubela. Will you proceed now?
Thanks. I was just about to say that all of that which was done during the apartheid era, the ANC government is undoing all of that based on our progressive and quality policies and laws. The other issue was raised by Honorable Kalisa in terms of the department's narrow focus, according to him, or narrow approach in terms of the sectoral approach that has been raised. But the country does know that Operation Phakisa, as well as the Marine Spatial Planning Bill, is a broad and expanded approach by the ANC government to the issues affecting relevant departments and government collectively. Now, that may not be necessarily raised, that the focus of the department is that narrow. May I as well just attend to honorable pardon. I've heard you indicating that probably the ANC in 2019 may not be in government. And let me assure you that come 2019, the ANC is here to stay. In fact, the DA is the last party to engage on where people come from or stay versus their capacities. Because we know how you're dealing with the issue of representation in your own structures. The very last point I want to raise is that we have been seized as the portfolio committee with the issues of the Waste Bureau, and we have resolved on them as to what should happen, how it should be managed, and so on. So for a member, in particular, Honorable Steenkamp, to come and want to say that probably it's your view, or as a party to attend to that issue, it's merely just grandstanding. And the portfolio committee is dealing with those issues, and we are serious. Even the minister does know that we have got an issue with that as a portfolio committee, and we are driving that particular process. Allow me to indicate that this 2018 budget vote debate, by making a bold and factual statement from the very beginning that there were no known environmental policies and legislation which were deemed fit to safeguard environmental protection before 1994. South Africa has only known quality policy and legislative development after 1994 in terms of the ANC government. There were no best practices, norms or standards for managing the environment. There were no environmental issues as far as the apartheid government was concerned. Industries behaved as they saw fit, owing to the cozy relationship between the executive managers of those companies and those in government who were supposed to regulate the environmental conduct of those polluting companies. Those companies often bought their ways out of any environmental compliance requirement and continued to do things as they saw fit at the time. Before 1994, administrative decision-making in South Africa was hierarchical, secretive, and deeply unfair to the majority of the people. Land use and resources-related policies were implemented to exclude non-Europeans. Conservation meant dispossession for the majority of South Africans. Consequently, the response of the new African National Congress government to the discriminatory land use and environmental policies of the apartheid state was characterized by measures to support economic growth and job creation, democratic empowerment, and environmental stewardship following the transition to democracy in 1994. That was truly a formidable task on which we should anchor this budget vote debate on in pushing our environmental agenda forward. The 20-year review of the environmental sector recorded an impressive success for which we all need to be proud as South Africans and to support the efforts of our Honorable Minister and the environmental team. Thanks be to you, Minister, and your wonderful, diligent, and hard-working team. We are pleased, Honorable Chairperson, we are pleased that the department aims to gazette the National Climate Change Response Bill for public comments in this current financial year. We are of the view that climate change is a cross-cutting issue that requires an act of Parliament to pull all key stakeholders together in driving our climate change agenda forward. Such a climate change act would oblige all key stakeholders, both in government and in the private sector, to take account of climate change in what they do in operationalizing our two high-level objectives that descend from the National Climate Change Response Policy White Paper, with the first objective being to effectively manage the inevitable climate change impacts through interventions that build and sustain South Africa's social, economic, and environmental resilience and emergency response capacity. Secondly, to make a fair contribution to the global effort to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations within a time frame that enables economic, social, and environmental development to proceed in a sustainable manner. It is important that we, as South Africans, have endorsed the National Climate Change Response Policy White Paper as a vision and a framework for an effective climate change response and the long-term just transition to a climate-resilient economy and society, whereas the National Democratic Plan, whereas the National Development Plan serves as our development strategy up to 2030. With this, I rise on behalf of the ANC to support the adoption of the Department of Environmental Affairs budget, vote 27 for environmental affairs. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable, the Minister of Environmental Affairs, the Honourable Malewa.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Let me start by thanking all honorable members who have participated in the debate as honorable members from the Portfolio Committee, the chair who has led the discussions. I would like to just outrightly say that we may not be able to respond to each and every matter raised here. However, we'll continue to engage within the Portfolio Committee. But thanks for the support to the budget being adopted. Thank you very much. Honorable Chair, we have listened to the matters you have raised. We do know that you have constructive criticism. In most cases, all members are like that. The game meat issue that we have raised, I'm just going to respond to just a few of the issues. Game meat issue that you have raised, you recall that as we deliberated on the issues related to the biodiversity economy, we illustrated how within this 2 million hectares that has been selected, that there would be, amongst others, the Matsila and many other communities that would become part of production of game meat going forward, so that we increase the production and stock up the shelves of various supermarkets. So that is in the plan. Issues related to facilitation of dialogue, we look forward to that, of animals bred into captivity. Body must just highlight, and I say this for record purposes because somebody has mentioned this from this podium, that as if animal kept bred in captivity and canned lion hunting are synonymous. They are completely two different things. We'll continue the debate in the meeting as set out, that the dialogue, which we really welcome. It is and should be intended to ensure that South Africa's face in the world becomes respected, we become respected, not just a face, as a country we are respected. Issues of legislation, yes, indeed. We have had a discussion on this. We do agree with that, but it belongs to the other committee, which is safety and security, justice, as the honorable member stood up and went to raise the matter in that other committee right now. With regard to the banning of the plastic, so Honorable Member Khadebe, they will not kill you, nor will they fire you if you tell them the following. That, no, they fire, fella. They fire and illegally. They will not even fire you illegally. Because if you say this, that the DA in Gauteng, and the whole of Gauteng, by the way, Pretoria and Gauteng, they are actually using the money that comes from the Department of Environmental Affairs, the plans that comes from us, all the issues related to what you said are actually our issues. It's a hand that delivers that thing. Just a mouth that says it, but otherwise it's ANC issues. So if you say that and you praise us, they will not fire you. Please say it next time. We have scientists in the department. Minister Pando is here. In her former previous life, she knows that she's been promoting development of scientists, doctoral and master's sciences. We have produced many of them in this country. They are, if you get into that vessel, you were there, by the way, and even if you say this, they won't fire you. You were there. No, you can get your names. You will not even be able to pronounce the name.
Honourable members,
the names,
please refrain from dialogue.
The people, and he thinks that he can dialogue with me. He doesn't know even how. The honourable members, if you remember, just recall, prick on your mind. Recall when you were sitting inside Miriam Makeba, 2. How many scientists were there? Black, young, women, many. Getting onto that icebreaker that heads for the Antarctica. Yes, they are there. So somebody says they are not there. Honorable members, the radar controls, I want to say to the Minister Qalisa, the Honorable Qalisa, I thought at some stage that we were in the debate that's not vote 27 of the Department of Environmental Affairs. Certainly, MEC Nsomyo has tabled his departmental budget, and you can then be able to send somebody of EFF there to inquire about the gentleman called Daimani's issues. Here, we are debating other issues. But yes, of course, if you raise these issues about what has happened, we'll definitely work with you to inquire what has happened, but certainly not as part of our budget here. It's very misplaced. The issue about Honorable Singh's issue raised about Gwala, we are aware of Gwala's issue. It's not Harry Gwala, fortunately, the old man. It's not even a relative. We are aware of that. We continue to raise this matter, and we have continued to say we will work with Justice Department and all other departments as we are working to ensure that the elements that doesn't actually belong into environmental affairs of poaching of rhino are actually tightened, namely harsher sentences,
Minister?
and all those issues. Plastic pollution, we will attend to this. I've raised it in my speech. Thank you very much. It's just a time that's the enemy of things. Otherwise, I would have covered everything. Thank you very much for the support.
Honourable members, this concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary session. The mini plenary may now rise. Tell me something.
Such a pleasure, Chairperson. Such a pleasure, thank you.